Hello and welcome to this presentation. My name is Dave Renninger. I am the Application Specialist for the Engineering segment here at Tekla Inc. This video is the first in a series showcasing Tekla structures for the engineering market. We're going to start this video here. We're going to show just the basic steel framing. The next video we'll get into is going to show some of the concrete, and we're going to go through the workflow from there. So starting with the steel, so when you first create a Tekla model, you're going to see this 3D model with a default grid. If I double click on this grid, here's where I can see all of the properties about the grid, the dimensions between grid lines, the actual elevations, as well as how these grids are labeled. Now that I have my grid properties set up the way I need it to be, I'm just going to start by here first modeling in some steel columns. So up on my toolbar here, I'm just going to click on my create column icon, and now I can easily snap to my grid intersections to locate my columns. Once I have my columns in, if I need to modify these columns, I can simply just select the columns or multiple columns and double click, and I can come through and modify any properties that are needed. So in this case here, I'm just going to modify the top of steel to be at elevation 30 feet. Now that I have those columns modified, I can simply just select these here and then right click, and I have the option to copy, and I'm just going to select here to copy these columns from column line 1 to 2. All right. So now that my columns are in the model, now I actually want to come through and model in the beams. So to do this, what I'm actually going to do is come back to my grid properties and easily come through and create model views along all of these grid planes. So here when I click on create, you can see that it creates all these views at one time based off my grid properties. So here I'm going to open up my elevation at 10 feet. Let's just arrange our views here so we can see both the 3D view and our plan view as well. So even though we have multiple views of the model, as we can see here, this model is connected. Everything's associated. If I select the column here in the plan view, it gets highlighted in a 3D view as well. All right. So now in this view, it's similar with creating the columns. Now I'm going to create my beams. So I just select my create beam icon, and now I'm just going to pick 2 points, basically establishing the work points for the beam. I can also come through here. I have some snaps down here that I can use to speed this up. So this one is a snap to lines. So instead of picking 2 points to dictate the duration and location of the beams, this one here I can basically point and say which direction I want this beam to frame, and then simply just one click, it's going to automatically snap there from grid in between grid intersections. Now to model in my infill beam, I'm just going to open up my beam properties here and change my profile here to be W18 by 35. Let's just activate my nearest snap. Now I can just come over here and I can use my tracking until I see that 5-foot dimension, and I know that's exactly where this beam is going to be located. And then again, I can right click and copy this framing inside this bay and also copy it up the rest of the floor as well. All right. So we can see nice and easy way to model in our floor steel. So if I want to copy up this framing up to higher levels, I could either come through and select these members individually, or we have some tools here that's going to make this process easier. So what I'm doing here is this is actually what we call a selection filter. Just as the name says, just a bunch of rules that we can set up to allow me that I can only pick certain members. So even if I select the whole model here, you'll notice that only the steel beams are getting highlighted. Again, just going to make it much easier for me just to pick the objects in the model that I'm trying to work with in this situation. So again, you can see here I'm just going to copy some of this framing up to my different elevations, and again rotate the model here as well. All right, so being as we've copied this floor framing up to the roof, probably don't need this heavy of steel shapes up here at the roof. So again, I'm going to easily just come through here, open up my beam properties, and let's just revise some of these profiles as well. So here we'll just change these beams to be 16 by 36. Maybe we'll come back in here and we'll change our infill beams to be W12 by 14s. So again, really easy to modify the framing even if we're copying it around. Now up here at the roof, even since we've copied the floor framing up, this roof framing is now flat. We actually need this to be a slope being that it's up at the roof. So what we can do in here, a nice easy way to modify this roof, I'm going to come through and add a construction plane. And you can see here in the construction plane properties, there's an option here to make this magnetic. So what I'm going to do now is just draw a basic rectangle in the model here of the parts that, how much of the model do I want to manipulate with this construction plane. So I'm just going to come back and set my selection filter back to standard so I can select this plane. Now all I have to do now, since it's magnetic, I can just move this construction plane, and all the parts that are along that plane will automatically move with it. So here I can just set in my values in the X, Y, and or Z direction, and when I hit move, you notice here that all these beams have now followed that roof slope as well. All right. So, but as you can also tell here, all these infill beams, even though they followed the roof slope, the rotation stayed true vertical to our z-axis. So again, really easy to modify this as well. I'm just going to come through here, change my work plane first to match that sloping member. Now if I come in and get the properties of these beams, we'll notice here that this rotation is set to almost 14 degrees. So if I change this rotation back to 0, now it's that easy to come through and modify all that infill steel to follow the slope of the roof. So now we're going to come back in here. Now I'm going to copy some of this framing down as well. So again, I can just come back here. Some other framing I want to copy around. Again, I could model this from scratch like I did originally. But again, if I have some framing in the model, sometimes it's really easy just to come through and copy that around as well. So again, here I'm just going to revise my top of column elevations here. Set both of these to be at 30 feet. And then again, we'll copy some of this framing down one more column line as well. We'll just come through here, copy from column line 3 to 4. And then let's also come through here, let's copy these beams up to the top of columns as well. All right. So here we can see how easy it is to come through and model and copy and modify beam properties to get our basic framing in here as well. And one more thing we're going to do in here is we're going to add some vertical bracing around this section in our project right here. Okay, now I could come back in here to my create beam icon and I could load in my vertical brace properties and easily model in braces as well. You can see here just different settings that have those properties applied. But what I'm actually going to do to speed this up is I'm going to come in here and use a component which uses these manual tools but also has some intelligence built into it as well. So you can see here we have some out of the box components already created for Chevron braces. So in this one, all I have to do is select the beam that the brace is connecting to and then the work points, and these components will automatically frame our braces to the center point of these beams. The same thing then for the beams. I can just pick the two beams that the braces are connecting between and the work points, and now you'll see that the brace handles are going to automatically go to the center line of each of those beams. So again, see how easy it is to come through, add different kinds of framing, and modify as well. So the next video that we're going to show in this series is going to cover concrete modeling. So thank you again for watching.